Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the PBB part number BB51 3.5 in a 630 finish. PBB is a hinge company, and they've been around for a very long time. They are an incredibly no-nonsense company that does, as far as I know, one thing, and that's hinges. And they focus on it very, very, very well. This is their BB51. This happens to be a 3.5, and it's stainless steel finish, and this is the exact hinge. So the bottom line is, what is a BB51? Well, it's going to start with the fact that it's a ball bearing hinge, and a ball bearing hinge is in a standard weight hinge, which is inferred to in the 5.1 in the part number, a hinge that will have two bearing packets in it. And I'm stammering because I'm pulling up my template to look at it as I do this video. Okay. This is 123 thousandths leaf thickness. That's standard for a standard weight versus heavy weight versus residential weight. 123 thousandths is normal for a 3.5 inch hinge in terms of the gauge of the leaf. The let's see here now. The BB on a standard weight hinge, like I said earlier, two bearing packets. You would not get a heavyweight 3.5. If this was a heavyweight hinge, there'd be 4 bearing packets, but it's a 3.5, so it's for an 1 3/8 door. You can use it on a thicker door naturally with increasing your backset, but a 3.5 wide would be standard for an 1 3/8 door. Now the 5.1 in the part number specifically means from this manufacturer that it's a non-ferrous, it's a stainless steel base material. It's not only non-ferrous, but it's different than the BB21, which is also non-ferrous, which is brass or bronze. The 51 specifically means stainless, and a stainless base material. And the way that their part numbers run is, in this hinge, you would have a BB81, a 51, or a 21. 81 is a steel-based hinge. A 51 is a stainless steel base material. That 21 is a brass or bronze base material. So that's how you can remember. 81 is steel, and then just go down from there. Steel to stainless steel to brass or bronze. The 5.1 infers not only that base material, but it also tells us that it is a full mortise hinge. And you can see from the swag on the hinge leaves here that when they're brought flush, they're meant to be mortised to the door and frame so that you maintain that 1/16 of an inch margin between the leaves. Very nice, attractive button. This is what's called a button tip. They can obviously do decorative tips on this material as well, such as ball tip, the most common of decorative. Urn, steeple, acorn tip, okay, can all be done in addition to that. The size, and of course it's available in all of the common sizes that you can do. It's 3.5 by 3.5, but be mindful to note that the height is the first dimension. And that may not seem incredibly important if you have a 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch hinge. It is important to understand that the height is what is the first dimension, because you may not be dealing with a square hinge, 3.5 by 3.5. You could have something that's not square, 4.5 by 4. It's awfully important to know that the height is the first dimension. Whether you're dealing with a 4.5 by 4, a hinge that's going to be narrower than it is tall, or a wide throw that might be that was 4.5 by 4. What if you had a 4.5? Pardon me. What if you had a 4.5 by 6, or 5, or 7? So it's important to know the height is the first dimension. I learned very early on in my career when a client ordered 4.5. The job, hollow metal door job, about 20 doors. 2 or 3 of them were 3.6 or 4.0 doors. Those doors, very normally, you'll find that the specification is for a 5-inch hinge, a 5-inch tall hinge. So the spec was for 5 by 4.5 hinges. The extra height is, that extra 1/2 inch in height equates to perhaps a 25% increase in the hinge's ability to hang a wider door, which means it's heavier, a heavier door because it's literally made of thicker gauge material. Well, what happened? Well, what happened was these doors were 3670. What's the first dimension? The width. In my very formative years, I thought hinges were sized the same way. 5 by 4.5. Turns out, when the 5-inch tall hinges showed up to the job, the client called and said, "Yeah, I've got 4.5-inch preps on these on these doors." Wasn't the end of the world because the application permitted us to increase the gauge of the hinge. We went with a heavyweight hinge, still at 4.5, versus a standard weight 5 by 4.5. So all was not lost. However, it could have been a problem that would not have been an elegant way to get out of, because the frames were grouted in. So that would have been a big problem there. And plus the doors would have had to have been replaced. So we got real lucky on that. The fact of the matter is I've never made that mistake a second time. The height is the first dimension when it comes to a hinge, and there's reasons why that's important. The 4.5 by 4s, what's nice about a hinge that's not so wide is that there's less projecting hardware into the opening, and you'll find 4.5 by 4 very commonly on aluminum storefront. And if you ever take notice of aluminum storefront hinges, the barrel does project off of the face of the door and frame less than a standard hollow metal door and frame. And unless you have a wall condition, that additional 1/4 inch of projection, or 1/2 inch when the hinges open up at 180 degrees, having less projecting hardware is always better. I've walked down tight hallways and I've caught my cuff, I've hit my hand on projecting hardware. So keeping that to a minimum is always an advantage. And if you do have a residential application, you've got doors that swing out of rooms, and it does happen, you can look for a narrower hinge most likely when that door is literally going to open up onto, the door can literally go 180 degrees, but it's just opening to a flat wall. You can always go with a smaller hinge in that sort of regard, provided you don't have unusual casing, like casing with a back band that makes it really thick. So be mindful of that. But there are instances when a narrower hinge makes a lot of sense. Being a 3.5-inch hinge, that means it's going to be a 3-hole leaf, and this is the template pattern. The template pattern means that it is in compliance with an ANSI standard for the physical location of the screw holes, which you can view from the template down below this video. This is 630 or 32D. It's made of stainless steel. Okay. What's unusual about this, though, is that it appears to have a lacquer on it. It doesn't appear to have a lacquer. It has a lacquer on it, which is atypical for a stainless hinge. There's no way around that this has a lacquer on it. I'm going to venture a guess that perhaps because this material is made in Asia and comes on an ocean-going vessel, they may want some protection from that exposure for 28 days crossing an ocean, whatever it might be. That could be why there's a lacquer on this. Does give it a little bit of a sheen. There could be another reason that they do it. They might say, you know what, we like how our hinge looks better with it. Okay. I'm not going to argue that it doesn't look better. If that is indeed a lacquer, however, lacquer will break down. One nice thing that you will not get from other hinges, and it may not matter to you, but you look at the back of that hinge. What do you see? It's finished. The front of the hinge, it's the same finish. Most manufacturers do not finish the back of the hinge. That may or may not mean something important to you, but to PBB, I know that it does. The other thing that I like about PBB in terms of finish is in the crotch of the hinge here. They do a much better job at getting in here and doing the finish work on the pieces so it looks better. I've seen some hinges by very well-known manufacturers, one in particular, that's just unacceptable. The lack of finishing inside the crotch of the barrel and the leaf, it's just unacceptable. And in fact, I had a job where the client rejected the hinge as a result, and I got the hinge pictures, and I said, yeah, I would reject it too. I would reject that as well. That's not acceptable. So PBB, I happen to know that they take pride in their finish process, and I know that from experience. So that template will give you the dimensions of the screws, and speaking of the screws, you're going to get all wood and all machine screws with this. I'm expecting these to be stainless. They're not magnetic, and we're going to go with the fact that they would certainly be stainless steel base material. So that's the link to the template that's down below. It does refer to radiused corner. They can do a 1/4 inch, they can do a 5/8 radius. They can do anything because they're PBB. And this is also a 5-knuckle hinge. I'm looking at the balance of the information that's happening here. So this client literally needed to hang doors that were in a marine environment, and the specification called out steel. Well, we of course caught that and said you probably don't want that. So went from a BB81 to a BB51. We've covered everything in the balance of the extended description that are here. A very good quality hinge. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the PBB products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I'm partial to PBB, and it's because of the aforementioned reasons. They're sold as each. When you buy 3, they may come in 1 box, but they may not. They might come just 2 in a box. This client ordered 10, so you know how many can physically fit in a box does not relate to the order multiple. They're sold as each. If you've got a 7-foot door or a 6'8" door and you need 3 hinges, just order 3. Any questions on the PBB BB51 on a 3.5 stainless steel or any other PBB product, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.